We are back. How are you, Cam?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Doing good on this Good Friday, and I am off today, so starting the weekend early,
Nice.
Never a bad thing. And I started it by watching the final 2 episodes of what we're here to talk about, Daredevil Born Again.
Yep, back half of the season. Covered the first 4 episodes in our previous episodes. Guess we can start right out with episode 5. Jumping back into it, we had a little bit of a recording mishap, but I was just saying, I was glad that they released those 2 episodes together, because the 5th episode I thought was a little underwhelming. It was fun, and there wasn't anything that was necessarily bad about it, but it felt like it really stood out in terms of tone and content. It felt a little bit more lighthearted, more MCU, especially with the inclusion of Kamala Khan's dad, which I thought was strange because you'd think if you're including him, you might have her show up in some capacity one way or the other, but they didn't, which I thought was a little strange. And there were a couple almost silly moments in that episode that I felt were a little bit unbelievable, like Matt cracking the safe so easily in the bank. The combination was kind of just the same kind of combination lock we have on our safe. It felt a little unbelievable. It would have been that easy. I know it was trying to show how powerful he was with his hearing and everything else, but it came off as a little silly. And I thought the robbers were a little kind of making stupid decisions and allowing people to talk and move and
Right.
and things. It felt a little bit like, oh, I've seen a whole bunch of heist movies before, so let's just kind of do that same thing. And it to me it stood out a little bit, almost as if it was entirely pre kind of series retooling that they did. So I was glad that they released that 6th episode, which ended up being very good and kind of started the ball rolling on the second half of the season, which ended up, I thought, being fantastic.
It was interesting, yeah. I was reading a lot this morning about the retooling of the show and how surprisingly, how much, you would have thought that they would have to completely scrap everything and start over,
right?
Going for the tonal change and going for the more directly connecting it to the previous series. But that clearly was one of the episodes, because they mentioned that there was a couple of episodes that are 100% intact, and I think that was one. And it definitely has that sort of Marvel show, circa the last few years. It definitely had that feel of She-Hulk or Kamala Khan or Hawkeye a little bit, and that's where those cameos were of, Yusuf Khan, Kamala's father, and then Jack Duquesne shows up in the following episode and has his little moment. And it seems like both of those were going probably somewhere different, and maybe they were gonna lead to further cameos, but obviously they that's probably part of what they scrapped and said, we're not going to make this. It almost feels like they wanted to make this in keeping with some of the lighter toned, Disney Plus Marvel television shows and keep it very PG. And, then what we ultimately got is thankfully a lot closer to the original show.
Right.
That's one of the things that I like the most about this show, is it really, even at times more so than the original show, really leans into just the drama and the character study and depth and all of that. It was really, just the performances, which we talked about in the last episode, were tremendous, really tremendous.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to Jack Duquesne there. It did feel he felt a little almost out of place, because he would just show up periodically every so often in an episode and say a couple things to Fisk, it seems like, and then it would just move on. And it was that it didn't occur to me that could have been pre retooling, because you'd think it was strange not to see him show up in I guess there was that brief moment, kind of security cam footage kind of thing of him, but it was weird that he didn't really have much to do, and they kept kind of coming back to him and this kind of dealing with Fisk, and then it didn't pay off. I kind of hope it does. I like that character a lot, and he's fun. I was hoping that he would have a little bit more of a chance to team up with Daredevil.
Yeah. It seems like they probably were going for a lot more of those fun kind of team up things, and ultimately, that's not where they decided to take the series. And it was funny reading about the original whatever it was, 13 or 18, some crazy amount of episodes that they were originally going to have.
Right, yep.
And now that, I think it's the same 13 episode arc, but they've just split it into 2 seasons. And this clearly was the build up to both Fisk and Matt, fighting against their former selves, and the whole arc of the season just took them to where, like, okay, that's over now. And clearly in the final episode, especially Fisk goes full Kingpin. Oh my goodness.
Right. Yeah, that was crazy. I don't want to jump to that quite yet, but
yeah.
It is. The last 2 episodes I thought were probably the best of the season. And although I will say I thought the last episode, this whole season felt a little anticlimactic, and I think part of that is because of the retooling and how they're splitting it into 2 seasons. Because it did feel like a lot of setup and a lot of... and by the end, it didn't feel like there was a ton of payoff. I do kind of wish they had fixed that. I don't know how they could have, but I am glad that they ended up getting it out when they did, because I don't know if we would want to wait even longer for them to drop it all at once.
I think next March is when season 2 is going to come out, so they're going to get it out, seemingly as quickly as they can, which is good. Just a note that at this point I teased something. We're probably going to get into some spoilers at this point, so just to throw that out there. One of the things, I totally agree with you. One of the things, if there was anything that I was let down by out of the final 2 episodes and the finale in particular, is exactly what you just said. It's a great setup for what's coming. This was these guys have tried to resist their past for so long. Everything's blown up. They can't do it anymore. And the next season is going to be, all out war or whatever the case may be. And it would have been nice if there had been a little bit more of some sort of cathartic moment or bigger cliffhanger, as opposed to more of just a setup.
That's a good point.
I think they could have given us a little bit more in the final episode to sink our teeth into, but that, as opposed to just being a more sort of still, there was definitely some explosions in the last episodes, but it's still more of a simmering to a boil.
Right. That's why I think I preferred the 8th episode to the 9th episode. That just felt like it was all coming together in a big crescendo, and just that dance scene where Fisk and Matt were swapping partners and talking to everybody. I thought that was super just fun and intense and just a fun way to explore. And I do remember, and this is kind of relevant, I remember what I was going to say. It is interesting that supposedly the reason that they scrapped the original idea was because it was taking them too long to get to Daredevil, and it was too much lawyer talk or allegedly that's what they said. Although it seems like it was more of a tonal thing more than anything else. But really, there wasn't a lot of Daredevil in this at all. It was mostly Matt Murdock doing his, lawyering thing, but it was just written so well, with a few kind of hiccups here and there, that it all worked very well. And I loved some of the new characters, in particular, Tony Soprano Jr. there, Michael Gandolfini's son. Yeah. I loved his character, and he's just kind of a fun, goofy, can't really tell where he's going to end up, if he's going to end up, as kind of Fisk's right-hand man, or is he gonna die some way after, making the wrong move? So I thought that was really cool. And his relationship with Ben Urich, Ben Urich's, I guess, niece or something. Right. And just how that is all playing out, and how you can't even tell whose side she's really on, because she's, obviously a reporter and wants to get to the bottom of things, but she's also kind of hanging out with him and going to Fisk's big balls and galas and stuff. So it's just the whole complexity with those characters and that relationship and everything, I thought was really interesting. Yeah, I think you can tell the tonal shift, because Yusuf Khan was just sort of a true cameo, at least the way the series ended up, and at least for now. Swordsman, they definitely sort of worked him back into the picture, and seems as though he's going to figure into it more in the second season. But then there was also that Detective Kim, who was very prominent in the earlier episodes, in particular those 2 middle ones, and she just sort of disappeared in favor of this Fisk's task force. So that was interesting. But yeah, that 8th episode with the dance scene and Bullseye getting first put into the population and then released,
and the tension between Matt and Heather and her,
right, yep.
because he's getting to the point where he just can't not be Daredevil as the series goes on, and she's still very much anti vigilante and doesn't understand why why is he so obsessed with Fisk, and she thinks he's a little bit. So it's interesting to see where they're going to end up and where he and Karen may end up, and it'll be all. And I never watched the Punisher series. Did Frank and Karen have a relationship?
No,
in that
I never
show?
actually. As far as I know, they didn't. I think that's more of just like a friend, buddy relationship that they have. But I never watched that show either, and I've been meaning to, but it's not. I don't love Punisher, although I thought he was good in this for his part in this series.
Yeah, he was excellent, and they're supposedly planning a one of those one-shot shows for him sometime between.
Yeah, and I guess John Bernthal is kind of heading that. I guess he's writing it. I don't know if he's directing it, but that should be interesting, because I guess he was one of the largest kind of people fighting for this whole retooling of the show, because it was too. I guess he, in particular, didn't feel like what they were doing with his character was in line with what he felt like was appropriate.
Right.
And it was cool, them exploring that whole kind of cop versus, like, Punisher worshipping cop versus Punisher himself angle.
Right.
And then he had some just really cool, awesome action. That fight scene in the apartment in the last episode, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that was excellent. And it'll be interesting to see too. So Heather accepts that job. You can't really tell willingly or unwillingly or where she's at,
right?
With respect to how whether she believes Matt or whether she has suspicion of Fisk or not. But then while the assassination attempt in the hospital failed on Matt, I mean, they basically just blew up his whole apartment and sent 20,000 cops after him. So you can't. So there's no hiding that. And it was interesting too, the relationship and how the reconciliation of Wilson and Vanessa came through. Basically embracing violence and Wilson basically embracing just the fact that he's completely back into being full crime lord, and this was all really an opportunity to kind of like just put the
get him back
into
the throne, basically.
Exactly, and how he's using the mayorship to do that. And I thought it was interesting too, uncovering those details of Foggy's case and how he discovered that Red Hook is this like independent space that like
independent port or something like that. Yeah,
that can't be subject to the rules of the U.S. or whatever. So lots of interesting angles.
That woman pissed me off, because you'd think she was going to be kind of fighting Fisk, even kind of secretly, but she immediately turned in that police commissioner guy, and then Fisk made crushed his head like a watermelon. That was insane.
That was crazy. Yeah, you commented to...
That was gross even for me.
Yeah, you commented
that was like Terrifier level.
Oh, really? Yeah. You commented to me that you were surprised how gory they went with. I thought you were referring to some of Punisher's kills, but that definitely took the cake.
Well, it seems like they're trying to, and to me it felt it was a kind of a riding the line between being as violent as a Netflix show and just being gratuitous. And I say that as someone that likes gratuitous violence in context, but it almost felt like a little out of place, but it was good.
Definitely, yeah. And post-credit scene, basically, it didn't really portend anything other than just, obviously Frank's gonna get free.
Right.
Yeah. When Daredevil sort of is sitting with Karen and then goes out into the bar at Josie's with his uniform on, and they were sort of shadowing out who he was talking to. I half expected that we were going to see, Kristen Ritter or what's his name, Luke Cage or
Mike Coulter.
Yeah, Mike Coulter sitting there, but I have a feeling we might.
Or even Finn Jones.
Oh God. Hopefully it's
or maybe Colleen Wing.
Colleen Wing, please.
Right, but that kind of comment about Punisher, there were some moments that like kind of rode the line between silly and unbelievable, and like comic book just kind of if you take it like Punisher tricking that guy, felt a little like kind of silly and obvious. Although that being said, I could kind of believe that this cop that like worships Punisher wouldn't want to turn down the opportunity to shake his hand, but it felt a little silly. And I feel like there were moments kind of throughout the show, even in the better episodes, that I was kind of like, that's a little like ridiculous. Like Matt recognizing Heather based on Muse's painting, just like feeling it. I thought that was a little silly.
Yeah. But there was no other way.
And I don't know. Right.
There's no other way he's going to be able to rescue her.
Just like, we have to get him there somehow. Like,
right.
And from what I understand, I think Muse was supposed to be a bigger villain. I thought he was going to be the big bad of the season, but they kind of just dispatched him pretty unceremoniously and forgot about him.
Yes, very much so. I thought it was good in a way that, okay, there's going to be layers to this show. Who you think is going to be the big bad is not necessarily going to be the big bad. But I'm sure that was just part of retooling or repairing the storyline. And then, because I was surprised to see Bullseye come back.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, I kind of figured he would come back in some capacity. I actually, and to get into super spoilers and leaked photos, there's a photo of Matt and Bullseye working together against the task force for season 2.
Yeah, you can kind of feel that's coming, that he's gonna get some sort of reconciliation with him.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting too. We still don't know. I'm still convinced Foggy is alive, but I kind of thought that would happen by the end of the season, but it didn't. But it would be interesting if Matt found out Foggy was alive. I wonder if he would consider working with Bullseye after that. So that's another something to consider.
Well, Bullseye's off now that it was revealed that Vanessa ordered the hit, and it was all connected. Right. It wasn't just revenge. I think Matt, that gives Matt room to do that. But yeah, if they bring Foggy back, man, that's going to be interesting to see how they pull that off. Right.
Well, to me it just seems so dumb to make such a big deal of bringing them back and to just kill them off in the first few minutes. It almost seems like they wanted to get that done early, that way they could have as many episodes to let that sink in, and then it'll be even bigger reveal when he's alive. And I don't know. I don't think it's super impossible. He could have gotten resuscitated in an ambulance on the way to the hospital, kind of thing. He it's the MCU, so anything could happen. And I could just see it. I could see it being the case where he was keeping himself away. Well, he's probably in witness protection if they're following the comics, and he probably saw that his death led Matt to not be Daredevil again and wanted to keep it that way. But now that Matt's Daredevil again, it's almost like there's no point. That's kind of my theory, but yeah, who knows?
That's a great theory. My only thing is that, like, with Matt's senses and how well he knows Foggy, it's like, how did he get through the whole everything? Just ambulance, hospital, morgue, funeral, and it not being.
Well, that's the thing. We never actually saw a funeral.
No, that's true.
They didn't really have a whole mourning scene at all. Really, there was a couple brief moments, but that also leads me to believe that there might be some trickery going on, because they really didn't focus too much on, like obviously it was the impetus for the whole season, and it came back, lightly throughout, but they didn't ever finalize it.
What will be a real kicker is if it turns out that Karen knows that Foggy's alive and hasn't told him that.
That will be interesting.
Yeah.
And you kind of think he did the same thing to them in season 3 when he made them all believe that he was dead. Obviously the circumstances were very different, but I don't know, it would just be interesting. It's funny, I did think when Frank came in to help Daredevil fight the cops off, he said oh, someone gave me a call to protect you. I kind of thought it was Foggy.
Oh, jeez, yeah, I had a feeling it was Karen.
I didn't. She kind of vanished too, so I kind of thought she was done.
I want to root for our namesake character, but he's just too bad.
I know. We can't go the episode without dropping a Buck Cashman reference.
Absolutely, yeah. We need more.
I love his character. He's just so slimy and he's very well put together and well groomed and everything, but he has this weird sliminess to him that you can't really get behind. But he's just one of those cool background goon characters.
It's funny. Well, that I've been watching. I started watching the original series over again, And I remember thinking, I've gotten a good, decent way through the first season, and it's amazing how close in tone and style it is, but yet, there is a lot of new things. To me, that there's a more, even though it's very grounded, there's some fantastical elements and comic book elements to the Netflix show that they've leaned, that to me is the one difference, is this show has leaned even more into the just human drama and street level story between the characters, more so than that has.
Yeah, if you were to kind of directly compare it to me, the original show, it feels a little bit more, I don't know, not that this is necessarily like a slight against Born Again, but the original show feels a little bit more prestige, like there was a little bit more, well, it was, because it was all those veteran, TV producers like that worked on Buffy, Drew Goddard, and everybody else.
Yep.
And it just felt like so much more, like, I don't want to say well done, but just like there was a lot more depth, and like, for as much as I love Born Again, it still did end up feeling like it was very much like, okay, we got to do something with Daredevil. What should we do? And put it in the MCU kind of thing. Whereas the original show was a little bit more contemplative. It was a little bit talkier. It was a lot slower, I think. For better or worse. I love both shows, and part of me wants to say I prefer Born Again just because I like that snappier kind of, like, there was a lot of just like, Matt going to the priest and talking about how he's bad or is he good or blah blah blah. There wasn't as much of that kind of like morality of being a hero kind of thing, or when there was, it was less like heavy and weighty, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing because they focused on it a lot. But to me, there is a very clear difference in kind of like how both films or both shows were put together, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Marvel gets these kind of like either newcomers or people who are just kind of taking a job kind of thing, whereas that Daredevil felt like it was much more of all of these legendary kind of TV producers coming together and making something really, really special. But not to say one is better than the other. I really liked both.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm interested to continue watching that as we wait for this. So overall, I would say, great job. Some things that are, it left me wanting more in a good way in some ways, and in a slightly disappointing way in other ways. But the best episodes of this season were just phenomenal. And again, I'll nod to, Cox and D'Onofrio in particular. Really,
they were
really just so showcases for these guys, and definitely leaves you wanting more.
Well, I guess I'll just wrap up by saying I think, from what I understand, these last few episodes, in particular 8 and 9, were entirely new, like the new creative team. So I'm hoping that season 2 is a big kind of jump in quality, and now that they have full control over the direction that they're going. So I'll be interested to see.
And we've got a lot to look forward to now. Sinners just came out last night.
Yeah, I gotta catch that
today. I'm hoping to catch that this weekend. That looks fantastic.
Might see that on Sunday. We'll see. Or actually, no, I might not be able to, but maybe Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, Andor. I'm gonna start rewatching that now that Daredevil's done.
Exactly. Yeah, I might at least watch the final episode just to catch me up, and then Thunderbolts.
Yeah, looking forward to that. That looks very good.
Looks very good. I was telling you offline how I watched that Kevin Bacon show on Amazon Prime.
Right, yep.
Yeah, I don't think that's one we'll spend time on, but I watched it. It's a very bingeable show. I binged it on a Saturday afternoon, just because off and on, because it's basically like 30-minute-ish episodes, and it's good, but it's
that's kind of a selling point for me.
Right, it's kind of standard. There's some points of it that have a cinematic quality. There's some points of it where it seems very much like a CW TV show. It's got that sort of like feel to it, and especially when it comes to some of the effects, it's definitely not a high budget show, but it's enjoyable. So if anyone's looking for something to look at to spend an afternoon. and being entertained by.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that was a demon hunter show. I thought it was just kind of standard. He's a spy hunting down Bond. I don't know what bondsman actually means, but that just kind of gave me the impression that it was more of just a standard like spy or assassin thriller kind of thing.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you all very much for listening. As we've just teased, we've got a lot to cover in the coming weeks, and we will be back with you to cover it. We thank you for listening. Wherever you're finding us, keep finding us. Give us likes and make sure you're subscribed to us wherever you're finding our podcast. We very much appreciate it. And we will be back with you soon.
See you on the next one, guys.